The markets are extremely volatile as Bitcoin has been dropping beneath 100k in the past week, and the altcoins have been completely destroyed in the past weeks as the global uncertainties have risen. However, I decided to rebalance my altcoin portfolio. The past week, the markets have been completely insane as we have been seeing a lot of volatility taking place during the weekends, with everything that's taking place in either Israel or Gaza and now with Iran. And that has been moving the markets as the altcoins have been completely crashing down and have potentially been printing their all-time low, or they have been printing their all-time lows, and it could be the low of the cycle. And it reminds me of other periods where we had a similar situation taking place, as we should be reminded that panic situations are causing extreme price fluctuations, which is that the previous time that I reminded or be reminded from a case that has been comparable to Iran is the period during COVID-19, where Bitcoin has been collapsing. And yes, the price fell way deeper due to the breakdown of BitMEX. I think we wouldn't have seen 3.7k. I think we would have been bottoming around 6 to 7k, which is very comparable to the current price action that we saw in the previous weeks, where news started to follow each other, resulting into a cascade of price action downwards. And that is quite often represented as an opportunity into the markets, independent of what type of event it is. For sure, COVID is completely different than Iran, but it can cause the exact same price reaction on the markets. The markets don't care what type of event there is. And in recent periods, we have seen that the constant rally of gold basically provided no risk on appetite or no risk on climate. And that is extremely frustrating for everyone. Where if we have a small summary of what has been happening, is that initially we had the US attacking Iran with the B-2 bombers, what we saw on social media, big boys that have been attacking Iran, after which some sort of script was played out where Iran was able to attack some facilities of the US, but the US was so strong that they defended that because they got a notification up front. And now we are having a ceasefire between all the parties after Trump has tweeted that. And that basically resulted into the first trigger of the markets going back up. So initially with the first two events, we saw that the markets were decided to tank massively, as during the weekend Bitcoin collapsed to sub 100k, gold basically ready towards a new all-time high, and oil also went up by 10%, which is a standard panic response in those type of events, which reminds me of previous ones, which was the event during August of 2024, where the markets also collapsed due to the fact that the basis trade was unwinded, which was the fact that people were able to borrow in Japan for basically 0% and couldn't invest it somewhere else. And as the Bank of Japan decided to do a rate hike, this resulted into a breakdown of the markets as a response. The key point here is that we are seeing a case where the markets have been able to be bouncing back so swiftly, as Bitcoin has been jumping back up to 106k, and the markets panic, rumors of a Black Monday start to kick in, and usually retail investors are looking to quickly get out of their positions, and smart investors are stepping into the market. So as a result, we are in the far extreme period of capitulation of altcoins. Our charts are completely vanished away, and they have been continuing to fall. But the question is, if your project is fundamentally safe and sound and has been falling due to the fact that macro has been absolutely terrible, would this be the moment to be selling it? Which, if we look at, for instance, TIA, it's currently making the lowest RSI on daily time frames since its existence of the actual asset on the charts. So now everything is collapsing. It is very hard to have or to keep your portfolio. But Psy has been holding up nicely, and as a matter of fact, it has nearly doubled in just a matter of days, as it has been making a strong bullish divergence, implying that we're looking for strong continuation here. And yes, it was also sold off during the volatility of the weekend, but it bounced back quickly because the momentum and sentiment was there. So that also tells us that once the markets are going to, or the geopolitical unrest is going to be a little bit more calm, it's very likely that all those altcoins are going to do a big run, which means that we need to do a slight rebalancing of the portfolio. Now, the portfolio has completely vanished away, and if I would have been made this video during the weekend, I think the performance of the altcoin portfolio would have hit a new low, as most of the positions have been making constant new lows. But we are seeing some momentum here, and we are seeing a case where we are having one asset doing absolutely great. And if we start comparing the initial orders or initial price levels that we started to be buying those altcoins, then it's actually quite good that we're not down as much as those positions. For instance, if we're looking at the starting point of optimism, we started buying it at $2.25, while Celestia, we started buying it at $10, and all the assets in the smaller altcoin category, and we have been buying at an 8x or a 7x of the current valuation, which tells us that most of those positions are down 75 to maybe even 95%, while the general portfolio is only down 60% at this point, which tells me that even though we are underwater, we have been making more money, or we have been building the portfolio in that sense that once it goes back up towards those levels, we are having a beautiful return, and then we have another run to come. So in that general perspective, it's great. And as you can see with the portfolio performance next to me, we are currently having one position having a very big allocation, which is Psy. Psy is currently having a valuation of $12,000, which means that it's time to start rebalancing the portfolio a little bit, as it's very much skewed towards the actual valuation of Psy. And that meant that I've been selling some Psy. As you can see, I'm currently opening the portfolio. We have been selling $5,000 of Psy, and we have been rebalancing and reallocating that. So what I've been doing is I've been adding it towards optimism, $2,000 at current valuations, as I think that the ETH market is going to happen. And I've added it towards Celestia by another $1,000, through which I've been able to lower the valuation that I've been buying into that particular position. On top of that, I've been using the final $2,000 to be adding it towards Omni, to be adding it towards Renzo, to be adding it towards Avo and Wormhole for $500 per position. And you can see that for Avo, I've been buying it 8 cents, and for Wormhole, I've been buying it at 6 cents. Well, initially we started it at 22, and for Avo at 90 cents. So there's a lot of upside to come. But if we look at Avo, for instance, we have been started to be buying it at 90 cents, and the current break-even point is 37 cents. So we have been lowering the break-even point nicely here. And as you can see, after the rebalancing of the portfolio, it's nicely skewed towards every asset. Every asset is particularly close to each other, where the biggest position is optimism at this point, which is completely fine. And I think that what I want to establish right now is that if one asset outperforms the other, I want to use the profits in that one to be allocating it towards projects that have been underperforming, while still fundamentally safe and sound, as during this period, you want to be extremely risk on with your portfolio to maximize the returns in the first part of the run. So if we get back towards the November highs of 2024, this portfolio is going to be in profit substantially due to the rebalancing that I've been doing. Now, if we start looking at the technical perspective of the altcoins, we can see that Psy, for instance, has been making a massive bullish divergence, and it has been rotating upwards, where it printed the highest point since March of 2025. And it's not unlikely that in the coming periods, it's going to stabilize a little bit, where money is going to rotate towards the rest of the ecosystem. Where, for instance, for Psi against USDT, we have been making a higher low. We are printing a higher high at this point, and it's the highest point since January 2025, which means that with this wick, it is not unlikely that we are able to be buying back into Psi at anything between 20 to 24 cents. Well, if we're looking at, for instance, optimism, it is currently building a massive, massive bullish divergence, which means that even though it doesn't feel like we're going to be rotating here, I'm very happy to be doing it and expecting a lot of upside to come after it has been bottoming, which is very likely happening at this stage. And if it does a comparable move to Psi, which is a 2 to 3x from here, my portfolio, including all the other assets, is already going to be closer to break even, while the starting point is substantially higher. And that brings me to things like Omni, which are all, compared to Psi, which are all currently printing potential bullish divergences, which is absolutely disastrous if we look at the general price performance, which is constantly going down. But as you can see here, we are making a potential bullish divergence, which is also the case for the 3-day and for the weekly on Wormhole, which is now making another double bottom structure, where if we look closely, we are able to almost reclaim the previous low. And if that happens, Wormhole is very likely going to attack the 12-cent area and most likely going to run towards 16 cents, which is 3x from here. And if we look at Wormhole versus Bitcoin, we can still say that there is a bullish divergence being applicable at this point, where also, if we're looking at Renzo, it is also building up the bullish divergence. So I take the move of the first asset and I rotate those funds into the next group of assets, where I think that based on the same confirmation on technical perspective, while fundamentally still being safe and sound, but the confirmation on a technical side basically makes me rotate the funds to compound the returns, which then, if we go back towards the initial price point where I started buying Optimism, for instance, that is a 4x from here, which would mean that my portfolio is going to run to 160k. But if we look at the smaller positions and they do the 7 to 8x, very likely if we go back towards the initial buy levels that I've been buying those positions, my portfolio is going to be a 2 to 3x, except for what is going to come afterwards. So this is great. And I think that although we are in the capitulation, we are still building the altcoin portfolio. Before we continue, it's time for this little bulletin. Are you thinking or preparing yourself for the upcoming bull market? That's the ideal time to be switching towards a new or better exchange. It's the perfect time as the markets are slightly heating up, and that's why OKX has just launched the transfer days, which is a very limited campaign where Dutch users can move their assets to OKX and get rewarded with up to 1,000 euros. And that's a lot. Now, here is how it works. Join the campaign before June the 30th, so you only have a few days. Transfer or deposit 1,000 euros or more, hold your funds for 90 days on the exchange and make one trade. And that's only it. That's what you need to do. And the more you're active and the more you do or the more you deposit, the more you can earn. And based on that amount, the reward will be transferred into your account. Why should you switch towards OKX? Well, OKX offers the lowest trading fees, real proof of reserves. They are having the MiCA license in Europe, and they have advanced tools like trading tools and bots on the website. And they have the Web3 integration, so you can trade on DEXs within the same ecosystem. So it's built for anyone, for beginners, serious traders, and advanced traders, and it's fully available in the Netherlands. So if you're ready to upgrade your trading experience, head to the link below in the description beneath and join the transfer days at OKX. Let's go. You might wonder, why are you rebalancing the portfolio while you're still underwater? And the answer is quite straightforward, which is that I'm going to pursue this strategy and continue to do this strategy by adding more risk on assets the lower it gets, in order to make the swing back upwards as fast as possible, as profitable as possible. And the reason that I'm doing this is that I'm able to compound my returns, but those compounding returns will only be visible when the net returns come in, when we go back towards the initial buy levels. I've been doing this before with BitTensor, I've been doing this with ENS, and now I'm doing it with Psi, through which I think that the portfolio is solid and fundamentally strong, while the markets might not be pricing that for the actual assets as of yet, and that's a concern. But I'm able to see that once we go back to those initial price levels, I have been making a profit while being underwater, and it's just unrealized profits that I need to see. Ultimately, I believe that we're about to witness a very strong market cycle, which is currently, we're still seeing and anticipating a massive altcoin capitulation, and that is painful for anyone interested into the markets or invested into the altcoin markets. Let's see whether the upcoming period will be continuing to be as bad as it was, or whether we're going to be a strong change in the markets. Make sure to subscribe to this YouTube channel, and I'll see you again on the next update. Ciao.